The tavern was loud, filled with the sour smell of old drinks and smoke hanging heavy in the air. Shadows flickered on the walls as strange alien voices mixed with laughter, curses, and the clatter of mugs in the corner. A lone human traveler sat quietly, sipping from a small glass, keeping his head low. He was used to places like this, places where cruelty was common and kindness was rare. At the far end of the tavern, the door slammed open, and everyone turned for a moment. A large alien stumbled in. His steps heavy and uneven, his eyes were red. His breath reeked of strong drink, and in his rough hands, he dragged something behind him. At first, no one cared. They thought it was another sack of goods or trash. But when the sack moved, when a muffled cry escaped from inside, a murmur spread across the room. The drunk alien shouted, "Another drink. Give me your strongest." His voice was slurred but still loud. He yanked open the sack and pushed forward two small figures. Trembling and frightened, they were children, alien children. Thin and pale, their eyes wide with fear. The crowd erupted in laughter. Some cheered, some mocked, none showed pity. The bartender leaned on the counter and grinned with sharp teeth. "And what do you offer for the drink?" he asked. The drunk alien pushed the children forward again. "Them, take them, give me one glass, just one glass." The tavern roared with laughter. Mugs slammed against the tables. Aliens whispered cruel jokes, calling the children worthless, calling the trade fair. The two children clung to each other. Shivering under the cruel stares, their small hands shook, and tears traced lines down their dirt-covered cheeks. In the corner, the human set down his glass slowly. His jaw tightened and his fists curled on the table. He had seen many things in his travels, but this was something that burned deep inside him. To sell children for one drink, to trade life for a sip of poison. It was beyond shameful, it was evil. The bartender poured a glass and slid it across the counter. "Deal," he said with a smirk. The drunk alien laughed, snatched the drink and downed it in one gulp. The children whimpered, trying to crawl back into the sack, but rough hands pulled them forward. The tavern watched, amused, expecting the little ones to be dragged away into darkness. The human rose slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. The sound cut through the laughter. His steps were steady as he walked forward. Eyes locked on the scene, a hush spread across the crowd. Some sneered, some leaned closer, curious to see what this fool human would do. He stopped before the counter, his shadow falling over the children. His voice was calm but firm. "I'll take them." The room froze, then broke into another wave of cruel laughter. "The human wants pets," someone shouted. Another mocked. "Careful, they'd bite." But the human did not look at them. His eyes stayed on the trembling children, and he knelt down. His voice softened. "You're safe now." The drunk alien blinked at him, then burst into laughter. Take them," he said, holding his empty mug. "They're nothing, not worth a coin, not worth a crumb. But you." He poked the human's chest with a dirty finger. "You're the fool who takes them. Enjoy your trash." Then he stumbled away, chasing after more drink, leaving behind the children he had sold for nothing. The bartender leaned closer, studying the human. "You serious?" he asked. "You really want them?" His grin widened. "Then they're yours, but remember, this is no charity place. If you take them, they're your problem now." The human stood, lifting his gaze to meet the bartender's. "They're not a problem," he said coldly. "They're children." The words silenced even the boldest laughter. For a moment, the tavern felt heavier, darker, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. The children stared at him, confused, afraid, but a flicker of something else shone in their eyes. Something small, fragile but alive, hope. The human extended his hand, palm open, waiting. The children hesitated, their little fingers trembling. The crowd whispered. Some thought they would refuse. Some thought they would run, but slowly, carefully, one of them reached out and touched his hand. Then the other followed, clinging tightly. The tavern laughed again. Though softer now, some shook their heads, calling him insane. Others spat on the floor, disgusted, but none dared to step closer. They only watched as the human turned, children in his care, and walked toward the door. Behind him, voices rose again, mocking, whispering threats, but he did not look back. The children pressed close to him, their eyes still wide with fear, but their steps moved with his. As the tavern door closed behind them, the sound of laughter faded, and the cold night air wrapped around them. The human knew this was only the beginning. Taking them out of that place was one step, but the real fight was yet to come. He tightened his grip on their small hands and whispered softly, "No one will hurt you again." And in that moment, though danger still waited outside, though enemies might soon follow, a silent promise was made, a promise that could not be broken. The night was colder than the tavern air. The stars above were sharp and distant, shining through the smog of the city. The human walked quickly. The two children pressed close to him. Their small steps stumbled now and then, but they did not let go of his hands behind them. The tavern noise still echoed faintly, but he did not look back. The streets were dim, filled with broken lamps and shadows. Alien merchants were closing their stalls. Strange creatures scurried between trash piles. A few figures watched from the alleys, whispering to each other. Some had seen what happened in the tavern, and their eyes followed the human with curiosity. The children trembled at every sound. Their heads turned quickly, their shoulders hunched. They had learned to expect cruelty in every corner. The human slowed his pace for them, speaking softly. "You're safe now. I promise." His words were simple, but they carried a weight that the children had never heard before. One of them, the older child, finally spoke in a thin, shaking voice. "Why?" The human looked down, meeting wide, uncertain eyes. "Why you take us? Why not laugh like others?" The question cut deep. The human paused, then answered quietly. "Because no one should be left like that, not for a drink, not for anything." They walked further until the human reached the edge of the district. Where his small lodging stood, it was nothing fancy, just a rented room above a storage shop. But it was clean and quiet. He led them up the stairs, unlocked the door and opened it wide. The children hesitated, their instincts warning them of traps. They glanced at each other, then back at him. The human did not push them. He stepped inside first, leaving the door open. "Come if you want," he said gently. His voice was steady, patient. The children stood for a long moment, shivering, then slowly stepped across the threshold. Inside the room was plain, a table, 2 chairs, a bed, and a small cooking stove. The human lit a lamp, filling the space with warm light. The children blinked against it, unused to such brightness. They clutched their thin clothes tighter. The human moved to the cupboard and pulled out bread and a jar of stew he had saved. He placed the food on the table, cut the bread and set it before them. "Eat," he said simply. The children looked at the food, suspicion in their eyes. They had been fed scraps before, but always at a price, always with pain after. They did not trust easily. The younger one shook his head, whispering, "Trap." The older one bit his lip, staring hard at the human. The human sat down, tore a piece of bread, and ate it slowly in front of them. "See," he said, "it's safe." His calm manner eased some of their fear. After another long moment, the older child reached out, took a small piece and tasted it. The flavor was real, the bread soft. He looked at his sibling, nodded faintly. Soon both children began to eat, at first in small bites, then hungrily. The human watched quietly, his chest heavy. Their thin frames, their hollow eyes, it told him how much they had suffered. He did not speak, letting them eat in peace. When the food was gone, the children leaned against the table. Drowsy but still cautious, their eyes darted to the door. To him, to each other, finally. The older child asked again, "Why help? You want something?" "Everyone wants something." The human shook his head slowly. "I don't want anything. I just don't want to see you hurt." His words confused them. In their world, no one gave without taking. His kindness felt strange, almost frightening. Suddenly, a sharp knock rattled the door. The children froze, panic flooding their faces. They rushed to the corner, clutching each other. The human stood, his hand resting near the small blade on his belt. He opened the door slightly. A neighbor, an alien with wide yellow eyes, leaned in. "You," the neighbor hissed. "I saw what you did. You took them. Why?" "You know the gangs will come. They don't like humans interfering. Those kids belong to someone dangerous." His tone was both warning and mocking. The human met his gaze without flinching. "They belong to no one," he said. "They're children, not things." The neighbor laughed harshly. "You'll regret it, human. Soon they'll come knocking, and you'll wish you left them in the dirt." With that, the neighbor turned and disappeared into the shadows. The human closed the door, locking it tight. The children's eyes were wide, filled with fear. He crouched beside them, his voice steady. "Listen to me, no one is going to take you again. Not while I breathe." His tone was firm, a promise carved in stone. The children studied him, searching for lies but found none. Slowly they relaxed, the younger one whispering, "Safe." The human nodded, "Safe." The night stretched on. The children curled together on the bed. Too exhausted to resist, the human sat in the chair. Watching over them, his thoughts were heavy. He knew the neighbor was right. Trouble would come, but he also knew he could not walk away. He looked at the small faces resting at last in uneasy sleep, and his decision hardened. This was no accident, no passing moment. Fate had placed these children in his path, and he had chosen to act. He would protect them no matter the cost. The room was silent except for the soft breaths of the children. The human stayed awake, his hand resting on the hilt of his blade, his eyes on the door, his heart on the promise he had made. A dangerous road waited ahead, but he was ready, because for the first time in a long time, he was not only fighting for himself, he was fighting for them. The city never truly slept. In the dark hours, its streets grew quieter, but danger never vanished. The human knew this, and as he sat in the chair watching the children sleep, his ears stayed alert to every sound outside. The memory of the neighbor's warning echoed in his mind. He had been right. Someone would come. Someone would want the children back. Morning came with a pale light slipping through the broken shutters. The children stirred, rubbing their eyes. They looked at the human, unsure if the promise of safety was still true. He offered them water, a small smile on his face. "We need to move," he said. "It's not safe here." The children exchanged worried glances but did not argue. They followed him, their small steps quick to keep up. Down the stairs out into the street, the human kept his cloak pulled close, trying to hide the children within its folds. The market had already begun to wake. Vendors shouting, carts rolling, alien tongues filling the air. At first they blended in, just another figure moving through the crowd. But then the human noticed the whispers. Eyes followed him, heads turned. Some faces were familiar from the tavern. Those who had laughed at the trade, now those same faces watched him with sly interest. The older child tugged at his sleeve, voice trembling. "They look at us, they know." The human nodded, guiding them faster through the maze of stalls. His heart beat hard. He could almost feel the net closing around them. Then he saw them. 3 alien thugs stepping from the shadows ahead, broad shoulders blocking the path. Their eyes gleamed with greed. One of them grinned. "Human, you picked up something that doesn't belong to you." The human pulled the children behind him. His voice stayed calm. "They don't belong to anyone." The thug laughed harshly. "Everything in this city belongs to someone, and these 2 were promised to us. Hand them over. And maybe we let you walk," the children whimpered. Clutching his cloak, fear painted their faces. The human's hand touched the hilt of his blade, but he did not draw it yet. He studied the crowd forming around them, whispers rising. Some wanted to see blood, others just enjoyed the show. "I said no," the human answered firmly. His voice was steady, but his body was ready to move. The first thug lunged, swinging a heavy arm. The human sidestepped quickly, grabbing the child closest to him and pulling back. The strike hit empty air. The thug stumbled, crashing into a stall. Chaos erupted, vendors shouted. The crowd cheered. The other 2 thugs closed in. The human pushed the children toward a narrow alley. "Run," he whispered. They hesitated, but the fear in his eyes told them to obey. Small feet scrambled down the alley. The human turned to block the thugs. The fight was fast, rough. One thug swung a blade. The human caught his arm and slammed his fist into the alien's jaw. The crowd roared with excitement for a moment. It was a game to them, a free show. But for the human, it was survival. The second thug charged. His shoulder hit the human's chest. Knocking him back, pain shot through his ribs. He gritted his teeth and kicked hard, sending the thug sprawling. The first recovered, spitting blood, rage burning in his eyes. He raised his weapon again. The human knew he could not win a long fight. Already more shadows gathered at the edges of the alley. More eyes hungry for trouble. He had to escape. He darted backward. Following the sound of the children's footsteps, the narrow alley twisted left and right. Damp walls closing in. He found the children waiting, trembling but refusing to run farther without him. "Go," he urged, pulling them along behind them. Angry voices shouted. The thugs were chasing. The alley spilled into a wider street, and the human's heart sank. More enforcers stood there, alerted by the noise. Their armor gleamed faintly in the morning light. Their leader sneered. "So this is the human who thinks he can steal property." His hand rested on a long staff crackling with energy. The children clung to him, eyes wide with terror. The human breathed deeply. He could not fight so many, not here. His eyes scanned quickly, searching for escape on the far side. He spotted a drainage tunnel. Half hidden by crates, it was small, narrow, but it might be enough. He turned to the children, crouching low, his voice urgent but calm. "Listen to me, you trust me, yes?" Their heads nodded quickly. "Then crawl through that tunnel. Don't stop, no matter what. I'll be right behind you." They hesitated only a heartbeat, then darted toward the tunnel. Squeezing inside, the enforcers laughed. "Running won't save you," their leader mocked. But the human's steps were already following the children. He shoved the crates aside and slipped into the tunnel. The damp air pressing close behind him, shouts echoed. The enforcers could not follow easily through the narrow passage. Rage filled their voices. But the human pushed forward, the tunnel twisted. Water dripping from its walls. It smelled foul, but it was freedom. The children crawled fast, their hands scraping against stone. The human kept behind, pushing them onward. The sound of pursuit faded slowly, until only the dripping water and their own breaths remained. Finally, the tunnel opened into a hidden courtyard. Sunlight breaking through, the children collapsed on the ground, gasping. The human stood tall, his chest heaving, his clothes torn, his knuckles bleeding but his eyes sharp. They were safe for now. The older child looked up at him, voice shaking. "They will not stop, will they?" The human shook his head slowly. "No, they won't stop. But neither will I." His words were simple, but they carried the weight of iron. The children exchanged a glance. Something new flickering between them, trust. They had been abandoned, sold, hunted, but now, someone stood between them and the darkness. The human adjusted his cloak, covering them again. He looked toward the maze of streets ahead. "We keep moving," he said. "As long as I live, no one will take you." And with those words, they stepped back into the endless city, the shadows still waiting, the danger still near. But now they carried something the children had never carried before, a spark of hope. The sun had climbed higher, though its light was weak behind the haze of the city. The human led the two children through quieter streets now, away from the markets and the watchful eyes of gangs. His ribs still ached from the fight, but he ignored the pain. What mattered was the children walking beside him, their small steps quick but unsteady. They came to a broken gate, rusted and half hidden by weeds. Beyond it stood an old building that no one seemed to care about. Its windows were cracked, its walls covered in stains. But to the human, it was shelter. He pushed the gate open and guided the children inside. The building smelled of dust and silence. It had been abandoned long ago, but the human had used it once before as a safe place. He checked each room carefully, making sure no one else was hiding there. Only after he was certain did he motion for the children to sit. They lowered themselves to the floor, clutching their thin arms around their knees. Their eyes followed every move he made, fear and suspicion still heavy in their hearts. The human set down his pack and pulled out a small cooking pot. He searched through what food he had left: dried beans, a strip of meat, and a handful of herbs he had bought days ago. It wasn't much, but it could make something warm. He lit a small fire in the corner, shielding the smoke as best he could. The children flinched at the sound of the spark, then watched closely as he poured water into the pot. The smell of boiling broth soon filled the air. Soft and comforting, the younger child whispered, almost afraid to speak, "Food?" The human nodded. "Yes, food." His voice was calm, steady. He stirred the pot slowly, waiting until the broth thickened and the meat softened. When it was ready, he set the pot on the ground between them. He tore small pieces of bread and placed them into bowls. Pouring the stew over them, the steam rose, carrying a smell the children had not known in years. Safety. They hesitated, their hands hovered, their eyes flicked to him. As if expecting a trap, the human said nothing. He only picked up his own bowl and began to eat. The first bite was hot but filling. He chewed slowly, making sure they saw at last. The older child reached out, fingers trembling. He lifted the bowl and took a cautious sip. The flavor was strong, warm, real. He froze, eyes wide, as if he could not believe it. The younger child, seeing this, snatched up a spoon and tasted as well. A soft sound escaped their lips. Half sob, half relief. They began to eat faster, hunger breaking through their fear. The human watched, his heart heavy. He could see the bones under their skin, the way they shook from weakness. He let them eat until the bowls were empty. then quietly refilled them for the first time. The children ate until they were full. Their small shoulders eased, their eyes softened. The younger one even let out a small laugh, quickly covering their mouth as if laughter was forbidden. The human smiled gently. "It's all right. You can laugh here." The older child lowered the bowl slowly, staring at him. "Why do this?" the child asked again. "Why care?" The human looked at the fire, then at them. "Because someone should have. Long ago." His words were quiet but carried deep sorrow. The children did not answer, but their silence was no longer sharp with suspicion. It was softer now, heavy with thought. They leaned against each other, their bellies warm for the first time in memory. The human cleaned the bowls, his movements calm. He checked the windows, made sure no one had followed, then sat down near the fire. The children had curled up together on the floor, their eyes drooping, but they kept glancing at him as if to be sure he would not vanish. Hours passed in silence, the crackle of the fire the only sound. The children drifted in and out of sleep. Sometimes they woke, startled, expecting to find themselves back in chains. But each time the human was still there, his steady gaze watching over them. When night came, the younger child finally whispered, "Safe?" The human nodded, his voice firm. "Yes, safe." They closed their eyes again, this time with less fear. Their breathing slowed, their small bodies relaxed. The human leaned back against the wall, his thoughts heavy. He had been many things in his life, a traveler, a fighter, a wanderer, but never before had he felt this. The weight of responsibility, the quiet pull of care. He looked at the sleeping children and felt something stir inside him, something he thought he had lost, hope. The fire burned low, shadows dancing across the cracked walls. Outside, the city was still dangerous. Predators still hunted, but within these walls, for one night there was peace. The human knew it would not last. The gangs, the enforcers, the ones who claimed to own the children, they would come again. But he also knew his choice was made. He would protect them, feed them, give them the life they had been denied. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "You are not alone anymore." His words floated in the quiet room, unheard by the children, but carried like a vow in his own heart. And in that moment, though the world outside was cruel and dark, inside this broken shelter, 3 souls had found something new. The children found food and safety, and the human found a reason to fight harder than ever before. A warm meal had become more than food. It was the first step toward healing, toward trust, toward a new beginning. The night in the old building passed slowly. The fire burned low and the human stayed awake, guarding the children. When morning came, the faint light crept across the cracked walls. The children stirred, blinking as if they had forgotten where they were. For a moment fear returned to their faces. Then they saw him still sitting nearby, his head bowed, his blade resting beside him. His eyes opened when they moved, and he gave a small nod. "You're safe," he said. The words seemed simple, but the children held onto them like treasure. They sat together, knees pulled close, whispering to each other in their own tongue. The human let them. He busied himself with kindling the fire again, heating what little food remained. After they ate, silence fell between them. The human did not force words, he waited. Knowing trust grew slowly. Finally, the older child looked up. His voice was hesitant but steady. You really want to know?" The human tilted his head. "Know what?" "Our story," the child whispered. His hands trembled as he spoke. "Where we came from. Why no one wanted us." The younger one pressed close to him, eyes wide and wet, but the older child went on. His words cracked now and then, but he kept speaking. "We had a family once. Not much, but it was ours. Our father drank, always drank. Sometimes he shouted, sometimes he hit. Our mother tried to protect us, but one day she was gone. We don't know if she left or was taken. After that, he changed." The child's voice grew harder. "He stopped calling us his children. He called us burdens. He said we were worth less than food, less than drink." The human's jaw tightened. His fists clenched at his sides, but he stayed quiet, letting the words flow. "One night, he dragged us to the tavern. He told us to keep quiet. We thought maybe he would find work. Maybe he would buy food, but he pushed us into a sack. He laughed when we cried. He said, 'If you can't fill my cup, then you are nothing.' Then he sold us for a drink." The younger child finally spoke, voice breaking. "We begged him, called him father. He didn't look at us, he just drank. He left us, Tears streaked down the small face. The human felt a fire in his chest, rage at such cruelty, but he kept his voice soft. You did nothing wrong, do you understand? Nothing, it was him, not you. The older child's eyes glistened. But everyone else laughed, they called us trash, they said no one would ever want us, maybe they were right. The human leaned forward, his voice sharp now but filled with strength. They were wrong, do not believe them, you are not trash. You are not worthless, you are children. You deserve more than what they gave you. The children stared at him. Stunned by his words, no one had ever spoken to them like that before. No one had ever defended them, the younger child whispered. Then, why you care? You are human, not even of our kind, why not leave us? The human looked at them both, his gaze steady. Because suffering has no species, because I have seen too much cruelty. And I will not walk away from it again, you may not believe it yet, but you matter. The words sank into them like seeds falling into dry soil, fragile but real. The children lowered their heads. Silent tears falling, they leaned against each other, clinging not just for comfort but for strength. The human sat back, his chest heavy. He knew their pain would not fade in a day, trust would not come easily, but he also knew that sharing their story was the first step toward healing. Hours passed, the children grew quiet, their exhaustion heavy, but the human could see the change, something small, fragile but alive inside them. The chains of shame were loosening. That evening, as the fire flickered, the older child looked at him again. You fight for us. Even though you don't know us, why? The human answered simply, because someone once fought for me. When I was lost, I never forgot it, now it is my turn. The children did not fully understand, but they felt the weight of his words. They curled near the fire again, but this time their eyes closed easier, their breathing steadier. The human looked at them, his thoughts dark but clear. He had seen what cruelty had done to them. He would not allow it to happen again. If danger came, he would stand against it. For the first time, the children dreamed without terror. Their small bodies rested, their faces softer. They carried scars, but they also carried something new, his promise. The human whispered into the quiet room, You will never be alone again. The fire crackled. The night pressed close, and though the world outside was still cruel, inside these walls something had changed. The past they carried was heavy, but now they no longer carried it alone. The children slept deeply after sharing their story, but the human did not. He sat awake watching the door, listening to the city outside, every footstep in the distance. Every shout from an alley made his hand drift to the hilt of his blade. He knew it was only a matter of time before trouble came. By morning, his fears began to take shape. When he stepped outside the old building to find water, he noticed marks on the wall, symbols carved by someone during the night. Gang signs, crude warnings they had found the trail. He returned inside quickly, his face grim. The children looked up at him, sensing the change. What is wrong? The older one asked. The human knelt, his eyes steady. They are coming for you. Maybe today, maybe tonight, I will not give you up. But you must be ready to move when I say. Fear flashed in their eyes, but they nodded, trusting his words. Later that day, voices echoed down the street, heavy boots striking the ground. The human peered through a crack in the wall. A group of enforcers marched, their armor gleaming. Their leader carried a staff that pulsed with energy, the same one who had blocked their escape before. The enforcer shouted to the neighborhood, his voice booming. A human has taken what does not belong to him. He hides 2 runts that were promised to us. Anyone who helps him will pay. Anyone who tells us where he hides will be rewarded. The human clenched his jaw. He could see some of the neighbors leaning from windows, pointing, whispering. He had little time. He turned to the children. We have to leave. Now. They grabbed their small belongings, nothing more than scraps and the blanket he had given them, and followed. Their steps were fast, hearts pounding. They slipped through the back of the building. Into the narrow alleys, the human guided them, weaving through the maze of streets, but soon the sound of pursuit grew louder. The enforcers had spotted them. Stop, human! One shouted, hand them over and live. The human did not slow. He pushed the children ahead, his voice calm but firm. Keep running. Do not look back. The chase twisted through the alleys. The children ran as fast as their small legs allowed, but the enforcers closed in. Their boots thundered closer, finally. The human stopped at a crossroads. He turned to face them, his blade hissed from its sheath. The children froze, terrified, but he shouted, Go! Now! Tears filled their eyes, but they obeyed, scrambling down the narrowest path, disappearing into the shadows. The enforcers laughed as they spread out. Brave human but foolish. You cannot fight us all. The human raised his blade, his voice steady. I do not need to fight you all. I only need to stop you here, the first charged. Swinging a heavy staff, the human ducked low, striking fast. His blade cut across the alien's armor. Sparks flying, the enforcer staggered back. Cursing, two more attacked at once. He blocked one strike, twisted, and slammed his shoulder into the other. The clash rang through the alley. The crowd that had gathered cheered and shouted, some for blood, some for the human. The leader stepped forward, his staff glowing bright. You think you can protect them? They are nothing. The human's eyes burned. They are everything, he answered. The staff shot a burst of energy. The human rolled aside, the blast scorching the wall. He lunged forward, striking hard. The leader parried, their weapons clashing with a sound like thunder. The fight dragged on. The human's strength began to fade. But his resolve only grew stronger. Every strike he made was not for himself, but for the children who trusted him. At last, the children reappeared at the end of the alley, their eyes wide with terror. No, the older one cried. They will kill you. The human glanced at them, his chest heaving. His voice rose, firm and unshaken. Go back. Do not stop. I will not fall here. The enforcers turned, spotting the children. Their leader grinned cruelly. There they are. He raised his staff to send another blast, but the human moved first. He threw himself between them, his blade flashing. He struck the leader's weapon aside. Sparks flying, with a roar he drove forward, forcing the leader back step by step. The crowd gasped, some shouted for the human, others cursed him. But all watched as the lone man faced the armored squad. His body was bloodied, but his spirit unbroken, at last. The enforcers pulled back. Their leader sneered. This is not over, human. You cannot protect them forever. We will find you. We will take them. With that, they retreated. Their boots pounding into the distance, silence fell. The human staggered. Leaning on his blade, the children rushed to him, tears streaming down their faces. Why do you do this? The younger asked. Why risk your life? The human smiled faintly, though pain lined his face. Because your lives are worth more than mine, he whispered. And because no one else will stand, so I will. The children clung to him. Sobbing in that moment, they understood something new. He was not just a stranger who had saved them. He had chosen to be their protector. No matter the cost, the human looked at them. His voice a quiet vow. From this day I am your shield. No one will harm you while I draw breath. And though danger still loomed in every shadow, the children felt something stronger than fear. They felt safe. The human's wound stung as he led the children away from the alley. His steps were heavy, but he refused to show weakness. The children clung to his cloak, their small hands trembling behind them. The city still echoed with whispers of the fight. The enforcers would not forget, but for now they had pulled back. They walked until the streets grew quiet, until the noise of the markets faded into the distance. At last they reached the edge of the city, where broken walls gave way to fields and scattered ruins. Here the air was cleaner, the shadows less crowded with watching eyes. The children looked around, uncertain. Where do we go now? The older one asked softly. The human paused, his gaze sweeping over the empty land. Somewhere they cannot reach you, he said. Somewhere we can build something new. They found shelter in an abandoned farmhouse, its roof half fallen, its walls cracked, but to the children, it was more than broken stone, it was freedom. The human cleared the debris, fixed the door as best he could, and gathered wood for a fire. The children watched him work, their eyes wide with quiet wonder. That night, they sat around the fire together. The children ate the last of the bread and stew, their bellies warm. The younger one leaned against the human's arm. Too tired to resist, the older one sat across the fire, studying him carefully. You don't have to stay, the older child said at last. His voice was steady but soft. You already saved us. You could walk away. The human looked at him, his expression firm. I made a promise, he said. And promises are not broken. The children fell silent. The fire crackled outside. The wind whispered through the ruined fields. For the first time, the children allowed themselves to believe that maybe, just maybe, they were no longer alone. Days passed. The human hunted small animals in the woods, brought water from the river, and patched the farmhouse bit by bit. The children helped where they could, gathering sticks, carrying stones, sweeping the floor. Slowly, the broken place began to feel like something new, not just a shelter, but a home. One morning, the younger child laughed while chasing a bird across the field. The sound was bright, innocent. The older one froze, staring, as if he had forgotten laughter could exist. The human smiled faintly. "That is how it should be," he said. The older child frowned. "But what if they come back? The gangs, the enforcers, they won't forget us." Fear clouded his eyes. The human crouched beside him. "They may come, but I will be ready, and until then, you will live, not hide. You will run in the field. You will eat. You will sleep in safety. That is what matters." The child swallowed hard, then nodded for the first time. He allowed himself to believe the human's words. As the days turned to weeks, the children changed. Their cheeks grew less hollow, their eyes brighter. The younger one began to hum little songs. The older one spoke more, asking questions about the world, about humans, about why he chose to protect them. The human always answered with patience. "Because life is worth more than a drink," he said once. "Because no one should carry pain alone." One evening, as the sun sank red behind the fields, the children sat beside him. The younger one leaned close, whispering a single word. "Home." The human's chest tightened. He looked down at the small faces pressed against him. At first, he had saved them out of anger, out of instinct, but now he realized something deeper. In giving them safety, they had given him something too. Purpose. The older child spoke softly, almost shyly. "You are not just a stranger anymore, you are family." The word lingered in the air, fragile but true. The human closed his eyes for a moment, then nodded. "Yes," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Family." From that day forward, they lived not as broken souls hiding from the world, but as a small family rebuilding their lives, each meal shared, each laugh echoed, each night by the fire strengthened the bond between them. The city behind them remained dark, filled with cruelty, but in their little farmhouse, light grew. The children carried scars, but no longer carried them alone. They had found someone who chose to stay, someone who gave instead of taking. The human stood one night looking out over the fields. His blade rested at his side. His body still bore the marks of battle, but his heart was steady. Behind him, the children slept peacefully. Their breaths soft and even, he whispered into the night, "You will never be lost again." His voice was quiet, but the vow was stronger than steel. And so the story of a drunk alien's cruelty ended not with despair, but with hope. The children once sold for a drink now had something far greater than gold or power. They had a protector, a guide, a home, and the human, once a wanderer with no purpose, now had a family that gave his life meaning. The darkness of the city would remain, but here, in this broken farmhouse, a light burned, a light of hope, a light of love, a light that could never be sold.